Sorry I've been away for a while. I've had some medical issues. Not eating right as a girl. Sometimes we do things like that. And haven't had enough iron in my system. So, bit weak and tired. And it kind of put me out for a little while. But hopefully in the future, I'm going to be eating better. So, I'm very sorry for being away. On to the show. On with the show must go on. Okay. Bono. I want to talk about Bono and globalism and how Bono is a sick, evil devil. He's twisted. I never liked him. The second I saw him with that Joshua Tree album, and they all came out first in the 80s, you know, they looked kind of punk, a little grunge. They seemed sincere. They claimed they were Christians. And when you see them in the Joshua Tree album, and he starts wearing these funny colored sunglasses, and he's got this attitude like he's king of the world. Well, it was at that point, Joshua Tree, when they became king of the world. They were on top. They were the most expensive ticket that you could buy for a concert. Of course, Nirvana looked like they might surpass them, but then Kurt Cobain died. But nothing really surpassed U2. They were like the new Beatles as far as fame and fortune goes. And I think the Beatles were a little more humble. With all their flaws, Bono's really the hypocrite. He goes around with Cardinal McCormick. And if you know anything about Cardinal McCormick, you've got to know a little bit about the Catholic Church and how they move pedophiles around and how cardinals are saved from justice in America. They move them all to Rome and they protect them. And this Cardinal McCormick was accused of having sex with little children, girls and boys, or seeing little children in Sunday school and serving on the altar, and also new seminarian students, raping all of them. Bono travels with this guy, and he travels with him to all places, Africa, where there's a lot of orphan children that you can kind of take advantage of. And there's an interesting thing happening in Africa where Monsanto and all these big chemical companies are moving into Africa. Now, we know that Prince William said that we must decrease the world population, and his grandfather wants to decrease it by coming back as a disease and killing off 3/4 of humanity. And we know that all his sisters were married to SS members. I mean, the elite of elites. I mean, if you're not Hitler or Goebbels or Gimler or Himmler, Goebbels, Himmler, Goebbels, Himmler, and the rest of the Rat Pack, the Nazi Rat Pack. An SS, you couldn't get any higher than an SS officer, and he's German. Essentially, they are the royal family is related. And by Prince Karl, who was the grandson of Queen Victoria, he went over from England back to Germany, Germany is the roots of the royal family. And he essentially started, through his descent, the Nazi Party. And we're not going to get into that right now and just how much German is in the British royal family and how connected they are to Nazis. That's a whole nother video. We're going to stick with Bono and his demonic hypocrisy. And I have a little clip I'm going to show you that you might have seen on the internet, which is really scary. And this is just one piece of evidence on how we can call some people the devil and Hitler and all these evil names, but I think the most twisted one of all, at least in the limelight, because the EU is a bunch of unelected leaders that nobody knows who they are, and they live on $85 million a day. And they're bringing in migrants from the Middle East because they want to displace the population of Europe. Let's get real, because these migrants have at least 8 to 10 children each. Girls from Europe get gang raped and killed by these migrants. And little boys get raped because they have these sexual emergencies. And the courts in Europe let them off because the EU runs everything now. The EU has the last say. Why am I talking about the EU and Bono? Bono is for the EU. He's for this unelected body of government. Whatever law the EU passes, whether it be good or bad, you have to follow it. So this humanitarian, he claims to be humanitarian, he collects millions and millions of dollars from his followers, from his fans, and about 1% he gives away to charity. The rest he keeps. He has a yacht, huge yacht, and a jet that he flies all over, which is not good if you care about a carbon footprint. So there's we're talking about hypocrisies, and the hypocrisies of the left. Al Gore, same thing. Jets flying all over the world. Anytime he talks anywhere, he has the limousine waiting outside and the air conditioner turned on at all times, because it's got to be cool when he walks in, and so that air conditioner is on in the car, spewing out all these emissions for several hours until he leaves. But he requests everyone who comes to hear him speak to come on a scooter. Now, the only person in this whole environmental movement that's sincere is Ed Begley Jr. His wife doesn't live like that, and he lets her live the way she wants to live, but he's very sincere in his beliefs. And he invents modes of transportation and ways of creating energy that doesn't have any carbon emissions or pollution at all. We must not forget pollution in the whole carbon emissions thing, because we must remember that the carbon emissions part, carbon dioxide, is officially listed as a nutrient. And that's what plants need to breathe in. They can't breathe in oxygen. We lower the carbon emissions, we lower the nutrients for the plants. And what do we have when we have less plants? We don't have enough food. And Brazil is cutting down the rainforest at a rapid rate. Remember, Sting had a big thing in the 80s about the rainforest, how we should save it because it makes oxygen for the rest of the planet. There's another hypocrite. Where is Sting? And we were talking about Obama, Bono. God, they all sound the same, don't they? Bono in the 80s. And his hypocrisy, how he kind of changed from this person who didn't want any more war Sunday, bloody Sunday, to this pedophile hypocrite. Because Cardinal McCormick, which he gives a shout out to in his concerts, after Cardinal McCormick has been sincerely accused of child rape and raping seminarians, he gives a shout out to him. And that's interesting, just filling you in on the whole rainforest thing if you don't know about it. Sting wanted to save it. All the stars in the 80s, they jumped on that bandwagon. Let's save the rainforest because the rainforest produces oxygen for the world, especially in the wintertime. We need the rainforest. And there could be medicines, not just species of animals, but medicines that could cure anything. And people were saying, oh, maybe it can cure AIDS. And if we cut down the rainforest, then we're losing all these plants that could contain the cure for all the illnesses that plague us. But we don't care about that anymore because we have this carbon dioxide thing. Well, if you replant the rainforest, that's going to suck a lot of the carbon emissions out of the air. And that's another thing Bono is always complaining about. It's another hypocrisy about Bono. They kind of go hand in hand. We talk about global warming, or if I mention Sting, it's all the same bandwagon that Bono is on. But I think Sting is a little more sincere, but at the same time, he's off the rainforest bandwagon. The rainforest that could, if you care about carbon emissions, that's the thing that might save it. And also planting more crops, seeding the clouds. But trees are the most important because trees, they've learned, are the ones responsible for cloud formation. It's what trees let off into the atmosphere that create clouds. Water molecules collect on dust particles in the atmosphere. It's the VOC aerosol-producing cloud trees like maples and oak, which are responsible for cloud formation. Now, sulfuric acid from burning fossil fuels was what we believed caused cloud formation. So burning fossil fuels has an end result of cloud formation, which is very important because the water molecule sticks to these particles, and that's what creates rain. They get more and more of the water as it evaporates from Earth, goes up and connects to these particles from the fossil fuels, sulfur, and then that comes down as rain. And if you have clouds and you have rain, then you water the desert. The clouds move because the earth moves, and winds also move the clouds. And you're moving them over the land, and then you've got rain. The water, instead of being in the ocean, which everybody's afraid that the ocean is going to rise, or if the ocean is rising, part of the reason that it's rising is because we have nearly 2 million at this point undersea volcanoes. The water heats from the bottom, not the top. The sun can beat on it all day. It is the ocean's floor that's heating up. And it's because of undersea volcanoes. So this whole climate warming thing and the Arctic melting, or part of the Antarctic melting, has to do with undersea volcanoes. There's one side of the Antarctic that's melting, the other side isn't. The other side is growing like crazy. There's nothing we can do about undersea volcanoes because the plate tectonics, the plates crack and move. And right now, the European plate is moving away from the North American plate. There's a break in Iceland that's getting larger and larger. And since the dawn of time, you had Rodinia. It used to be one mass continent. First it was Rodinia, and then it was Pangaea. It was a much larger continent. The continents broke apart and came back together again several times. The plates are moving apart. That's because of below the ocean floor, there is lava and there's a crack. And the lava bursts through, just like volcanoes that we see on land happen underneath the ocean. So if the sea is heating up, water heats up from below, not from above. So this is a whole discussion on climate change and why things are changing in the ocean. And part of it, there's only so much we can do about that. Give me an answer to stop plate tectonics and volcanoes from erupting in the ocean. But one thing we can do is plant more trees and get back to the battle cry of the 80s that said, Sting's original battle cry, I wish to God he would come out again and demand that the rainforest be replanted, and they stop cutting down the rainforest. Logging practice in America is, for every 1 tree we cut, we must plant 5. That's the rule in America. So don't be afraid of logging in America. Logging does not cause wildfires. It actually prevents wildfires. And we get more wood. We plant 5 trees for every 1 we cut. In the rainforest, they're just cutting it down. It's gone. They're not replanting anything else, which is how you're supposed to replenish a forest. It's good to cut down trees and you have new trees growing. Trees don't live forever. Some do. A lot of them die on their own. The ones that die on their own are diseased and they fall in the forest. And when they fall and they're not picked up, then that's when you have potential for wildfires. But that's also another video. There's a lot of subjects that we're touching on right here. But the big subject is, see, this is all a part of globalism. And what's going on with Bono and what's really pissing me off about Bono.
I didn't know how much I liked the Swedish, tall, blonde, blue-eyed, boring. But now it appears the Swedes are beginning to discover their Aryan potential. Oh yes. Sorry. Jimmy. I like him. He's done so well in the elections.
The clip that I just showed you, that is just frightening. Get that clip through your head for a second. Blonde hair and blue eyes is boring. Blonde hair and blue eyes is boring. Why is it? And the devil, he's the devil. His new persona is the devil. It's like this shortened version of Mephistopheles, which means the devil. And there's an opera called Mephistopheles. But that's the devil's name. And that's who he's playing. And the devil is saying that people with blonde hair and blue eyes are boring. And which is kind of opposite of Nazi, don't you think? Because if the devil doesn't like blonde hair and blue eyes, which the Nazis liked, he says it's boring. Then if you eradicate, it's an extreme minority, blonde hair and blue eyes. Tall Nordics, the Swedes. He's pissed off that 18% of the Swedish people, just 18%, voted for a guy who was white, but he has brown hair and blue eyes. He doesn't have blonde hair and blue eyes. Maybe the devil is colorblind, or Bono is colorblind. And the other ironic thing about it is look at Bono when he's young. I should have grabbed up a picture of Bono when he was young. He's got red hair and blue eyes and white skin. Boring. Bono's so boring. Maybe that's why he dresses up like the devil now, because he knows he's so boring. So he wants to eradicate himself and his children and everybody in Ireland, is what essentially he wants to do. You want to keep the people with black hair, like they call black Irishmen. Any Irishman that's got black hair is called a black Irishman. You want to eliminate everybody with brown hair and black hair. But the guy that people tried to, only 18% elected, had brown hair. So what the devil wants is, you see, here's the real kicker. Here's the real kicker. Let me drink again. The real kicker is the Nazis wanted to create a race of supermen. Yes, they wanted to create a race of drones where everybody was just blonde hair and blue-eyed drone people. okay? Which is a horrible thing to do to people, to just mass create these people as drones so they all look alike, which is really very similar like in China. Everybody's got the same color skin, same color hair, same color eyes. Those are, to him, to Mao, to communism, that's what you are. And everybody dresses in drab gray. Everything is gray. And the only thing that has color is the Chinese flag with the yellow star, the communist Chinese flag. That's the only thing that's got color. The only people who have money, who can wine and dine, is Mao, the dictator, and the elite, the people who he thinks, believes, is sure are loyal to him. So it's like a monarchy. You've got the upper class and the lower class. And everybody in the lower class is exactly the same. They walk alike, they talk alike, they dress alike. They're all the same. That's what communist does to people. And what the devil wants is that he wants this very small minority in the world have blonde hair and blue eyes. So by eliminating them and bringing in more people from the Middle East and making them all look like they come from the Middle East, which is not good for people who live that high up. And the reason why people near the equator have dark skin and people away from the equator have light skin, there's a reason. If you transplant somebody with dark skin all the way up north, eventually, and it will take a long time, the ones who survive, they don't do as well in a climate that's further away from the equator if you have darker skin, because you need sunlight. And there's the least amount of sunlight if you live up north. You need intense sunlight to create vitamin D, which prevents birth defects. It also helps with all sorts of diseases in the body. So what you've done is you've transplanted somebody who has the body type and the skin tone of someone that needs to be closer to the sun. And you've transplanted them into a place where they're not going to do as well health-wise. They found the skeleton of Cheddar Man in Cheddar, England. There's a lot of interesting things that happened there. They extracted DNA from Cheddar Man, took a class of children in England, a little private school. They swabbed all their cheeks to get the DNA to see who was related to Cheddar Man. As it turned out, the only person related to Cheddar Man was the teacher of the class. And recently they discovered that Cheddar Man had dark skin. So what happened? The people who moved from Africa moved up after the Ice Age. I don't think they were stupid and moved into Europe during the Ice Age. I wouldn't do it. I think they would have turned back, because the body type that comes from Africa, modern man, can't take the cold. The Neanderthals could survive the Ice Age because they had barrel-shaped bodies. So it isn't that one body is better or worse. One body survives an Ice Age, which we're actually headed towards. We're actually overdue for. And people with modern bodies do better in warmer climates. So Cheddar Man, probably his ancestors moved up to what is now Cheddar, England, and through hundreds of thousands of years lost the melanin content in their skin so they could survive in that climate. And I assume a lot of Cheddar Man's descendants died off and had rickets, all sorts of birth defects, because we're in a place where the sunlight was only a few months of the year was intense. Most of the year was not. So a lot of them suffered birth defects, and eventually they got all white. So Bono thinks Bono is the devil, or is that his real persona, the devil? thinks that blonde hair and blue eyes is boring. But that developed because it was the body's adaptation to where they were living, so they could absorb as much sunlight, so the body could produce vitamin D to prevent birth defects. And the people who could not take in the proper amount of sunlight with darker skin died off. That's what happened. They died off. And so the people that were left were the very tall, very robust Swedish people that survived the cold weather. Even the hair had to be light to allow more sunlight into the top of the head to produce vitamin D. So light skin isn't a bad thing. It just depends on where you're living. Dark skin isn't a bad thing. It just depends on where you're living. Your ancestors had to adapt. So by mixing everybody up and making them all one race and all one religion, that's the goal of the EU, that's the goal of Soros, that there be one religion. Basically, it would be no religion. Socialism is communism, and there is no God but the dictator. All religion is going to be taken away. But the religion that they prefer the most is Islam because it's totalitarianism. It goes hand in hand with communism. You have this absolute authority that dictates these rules. Everybody has to conform. You look at Islamic countries, and it's hard to see diverse, at least the women, you wouldn't know what color skin the women have, because they're all covered up. There's no diversity. You don't know what color hair they have. You don't know what color eyes they have. And the slits for the eyes, a lot of them have a net over it. And so you're looking through a net your whole life. And there's other things that make women exactly the same, because they've cut things off and sewn them up. And they're never able to feel vulnerable and close to their husbands. And I know personally that if I had a husband, part of the thing that would help me feel faithful to him would be that vulnerability that I felt in his arms. And the only way a woman can feel that vulnerability, get close to him, feel pure love, and feel like I don't want to be with any other man. Because I want the two people who are feeling vulnerable towards each other, because that's what the sexual feeling is. It's a vulnerability, are hiding in each other's arms. You don't want someone else to come between that. And if he really loves you and is protecting you, and you feel vulnerable in his arms, and he feels vulnerable, he becomes very vulnerable. Climax makes them feel very, very vulnerable. And you feel vulnerable together, then you don't want anybody else to come between. It would be less likely. They do it so the women don't cheat, and the women don't dishonor the fathers, but it's less likely that that will happen if the father loves the daughter and protects the daughter. You protect the daughter from men who might take advantage of your daughter. You keep those men away from her and protect her, and keep her for the husband. So she feels vulnerable in his arms, and she knows he loves her and wants to protect her. And that makes me feel that vulnerability that I still have. Thank God that I still have it. I want to save for the man that I love. So I will feel that there's no one else I want touching me. Yet this is the religion that the EU wants to bring into Europe and wants to overtake Europe, because it's totalitarian. And it goes hand in hand with socialism and communism. because it makes everybody the same, and you have to follow lots of rules, like a man is allowed to beat his wife into submission. Surah 434. A woman is killed if she is raped. It should be the men should be killed if they rape a woman. She's vulnerable, but it goes back to the Bible and how it's really all Eve's fault because the serpent gave Eve the apple. And in Islam, women are deficient in the mind. They only have half the intelligence of a man, as Muhammad, blessed and peace be upon him, said. And their witness statement in court, you have to have 2 women for 1 man, just in case the woman errs, the other woman can correct her, because women have their periods and they get emotional and they don't know what the hell they're saying. So that's the religion that the globalists and Bono want to bring into Europe. And the feminists, the Me Too movement, I guess recently they got rid of Linda Saussure because anti-Semitic comments, but I'll give you a whole list of things that is anti-meat, anti-women, anti-feminist, that a woman has deficient in the mind, and you need 2 women for 1 man. This is a part of globalism. This is what they want. They want everybody the same, mixed together. And then they're going to take Islam away too. By gum, because that's what communism does. They'll first keep everybody in line, and then they'll take Islam away too. They'll take God away too. So don't think that you've got it all sewn up if you're a Muslim. They're planning on taking God away too, because that's what socialism does. There is no God but the state. There is no God but the dictator. And if you're a God-loving, Allah-loving Muslim, I say do not subscribe to globalism. Keep your religion, keep your independence, and love your wife. She will be more faithful to you if you let her keep that part of her body that keeps her vulnerable, because she will be vulnerable in your arms and hold and cling to you. If you love her purely, that's all she wants, is her love and protection from her husband and her father, to protect her from harm. That's a beautiful thing. But Bono, who goes around with a cardinal and wants the world to be all one color, which eventually it won't be. Eventually the same thing will happen. But there's big industries moving into Africa. And that's the reason why Prince William said we have to start with Africa to decrease the population, because they all want to move into Africa. Obama didn't want them to have cars or air conditioners in Africa. He didn't want to build the country up. He wants to keep it the way it is because big business and chemical companies are going to take over Africa, and all the people are going to have to move up into Europe, which is not going to be healthy for the African people. There are Africans that are born with blonde hair. Eventually it turns dark, but they're born with blonde hair. So I asked Bono, are they boring? There's a lot of people in Arabia that have blue eyes. In Homer speaks of Helen looked out the window. She saw women bathing at night with red hair and blonde hair. Ancient Greece had red hair and blonde hair. And the people of Greece are all related to the people of the Levant in the Middle East. They're all related to the people that were in Egypt. We've recently discovered a graveyard that goes back to the old dynasty where people had light skin and blonde hair and red hair. The idea of light skin being better than brown skin, it just has to do with demographics, where people lived, what they ate, what terrain they walked over. This is how people evolved. Different branches of the human race came out of Africa, but developed in different parts of the world. And so according to climate, food, how far away they were from the sun, certain body types, certain facial features survive better in the cold, in the different climate. Nobody's better than anyone else. It all has to do with adaptation. This evil character that Bono has created, and that Bono has recently put out an album. He has his face on the pelvis of a naked adolescent boy, because the message of the album is man-boy love. There are pedophiles in your neighborhood that are having sex with children, but it's a beautiful thing and we need to accept it. The man is as sick can be. And the fact that he's flying around the world with a known pedophile and rapist of children and young seminarians, and bringing him to Africa, raising money to help these African people, when he's probably bringing this cardinal to rape African children and take advantage of the Africans. He is the devil. He hangs out with Bill Clinton, who's been to Epstein's pedophile island, where Epstein has underage girls that will have sex with you. He's been on the Lolita Express 26 times, and he leaves his security detail and goes off by himself. So he's seen with Epstein, Bono. He's friends with Harvey Weinstein. We know he's a rapist. We know Bill Clinton is a rapist. He's a sick puppy. I refer you to a couple of videos that's going to go into what he's done in depth. My primary thing was telling you that the whole idea of making everyone the same race and same religion, the religion will be socialism, communism. God will be taken away, like it always is under communist socialist regimes, and you will have a king, even though he's just the dictator, and they will have fixed elections like we're having in this country. I think it would be boring if everyone had the same skin tone, same eye color, same hair color, same religion. But the religion would be communist. There would be no God. The dictator would be God. And the elites would feast on the people at the bottom. And the people at the bottom would be all the same color skin, all the same color hair, all the same color eyes, and all be dressed the same. And you're expendable because there's no diversity anymore. No one is unique. Nobody is one of the 57 genders or more genders that will be created. Nobody is anything except what the state tells you. You are grabbing after this as if this is a good thing. It's going to null diversity. There will be one country, and there will be no free country to run to. There will be no country to look to, hey, the women are free there. The women are subjugated here. Women in this country all have their vaginas cut off and sewn up, and then their legs bound for 12 weeks. And then infection sets in, they die, or when they try to have a baby, when they are raped on their wedding night and the husband rips them open because they're sewn up, when they have a baby, higher infant mortality. That's a bad thing. But if that's going on all over the world, then there's no country for the women to run to. There's no example of free women. Or homosexuals are killed because they're homosexuals, because the doctrine of the religion says so. That's going to be the end game, is to take all religion away. The communist regime will make up their own religion and their own laws, just like the EU. Once the EU makes a law, it cannot be revoked. You can't vote it out. There is no Supreme Court. There is no Congress and Senate. There is no legislative branch to create law and pass law. It's just a bunch of unelected leaders. And Bono is pushing this. Al Gore is pushing this. Hillary Clinton is pushing this. She wants a world with no borders and an uninformed and compliant citizenry. You are nothing but a drone. That's the person you voted for. That's the end game of all these people. They want you stupid. They don't want you hearing the real news. So that's why you turn on CNN and MSNBC and ABC and CBS and PBS and all these. They're all run by the same people. They're all owned by the same. There's only 5 people or 5 companies that own all the media. And you think you're hearing the truth because you're listening to all the same people. But they're all owned by the same people, and their agenda is globalism. So they're all telling you the same lie. Do you get it? And you think it's the truth. That's why there's alternative media, not alt-right, but a different media sources are getting the truth out. In fact, if you look at what the globalist agenda is, if you look close enough, you'll see that there is no republic. A republic fights for the minority. A democracy, if more people want slavery, then you've got slavery. If more people want to abuse their wives or want female genital mutilation, you've got it. Because that's what democracy is. You can vote in the most vile person in the world. If the popular vote is for somebody that wants an uninformed and compliant citizenry with no borders, and therefore there's no free country to look up to get an example from, to better your country, or to run to. And you're all the same. Everybody's mixed. But as long as the equator is where it is, and the Arctic and Antarctic is where they are, and the sun dips, and there's different terrains and different foods, the recessive genes, people will start popping out. All of a sudden it's going to change, and it's going to go back again. It might take hundreds of thousands of years. If mankind is still alive, man means human, by the way. Please don't take offense. Then these different colors will come back again. Right in Africa, children have blonde hair. In Africa, albinos are born. Is an albino boring? No, all the people who all have the same skin color and hair color, everybody all being the same, that's not boring. But the person who pops out different, isn't that diversity? But in Africa, when somebody's born an albino, because they believe in voodoo, they chop pieces off of them because they think they're magical. They think they're a gift from the gods. So if you meet an albino person, they probably will have most of their legs cut off, their arms cut off. They'll be on stumps because they look at them as magical. That's a religion that should really spread. If you're all, you're not albino, which apparently are not the boring people. It's the albino that's the boring person, isn't he? Or she. Don't you think that's crazy? I would say that's diversity. And it's the diversity that's occurring in the same part of the world, genetically related to the same people, and all of a sudden somebody comes out unique, different. But that's boring to Bono. But Bono is speaking as the devil, and his name is short for the devil, Mistopheset, or something like that. It's short for the devil. The devil wants everybody to look the same. The devil wants everybody to be drones. The devil doesn't want anybody unique. The devil wants to eliminate all religion, have one religion. And I doubt it's going to be Islam, because they're going to let Islam flourish and then they're going to take it down because they want everyone the same. The dictator on top probably doesn't want to live by Islam. Most likely it's going to be an atheist. And they want you to honor them as God. So I warn the Muslims, do not let this happen. But you're going to let it happen because it's happening. And people look at superstars as if they're gods. When you become a really big superstar, you get really bored. So you need more and more drugs, and you need more and more stuff because you're bored. And you can afford all the fancy stuff, and you have to get more and more famous, and then you have to reinvent yourself. And then the good side is boring, so you go to the bad side, and you go after these weird kind of cult practices, because you have to be more and more unique, because the only way you can stay famous is because people keep coming up in the industry. And this person is like when Elvis arrived, he was the unique one, right? So everybody after him they copied a lot of his stuff, but they had to be more and more and more unique. The more unique you are, the more money you make. So that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to constantly reinvent themselves. And isn't that they're sincere about the person that they're becoming? They're just reinventing themselves to make more money. But they're not sincere about anything. They don't know who they are. Then they get lost and they keep taking a lot of drugs, and then they end up killing themselves. They become lost in the fame. It's a very sad thing what happens to famous people. But they want the fame, and they're addicted more to the fame than they are to the drugs. And that's the truth. That's why Bono's insane. Absolutely insane. And he loves attaching himself onto really weird, sick, out of the norm people like pedophiles and the Pope and the Catholic Church, who hides all the pedophiles. Because maybe he was always a pedophile, and this way he can get to legitimize pedophilia by advertising it to the world. Yet at the same time, he wants everybody to look alike. Well, that little boy that you put on the Boy album, apparently that was his neighbor. He was a little blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy. And that little boy said, I was his neighbor, but I didn't know who he was at all. Apparently Bono's been watching him for an awful long time and probably whacking off. Then he takes a picture of the kid like naked and shirtless in a seductive position. And then he uses him again for the War album. He's been watching that little boy for a long time. So Bono is a closet. I don't care if Bono's gay, but he's been married for years. Just be who the hell you are. But if you're a pedophile, there's a different category. Him hanging around with this Cardinal McCormick means that he's legitimizing pedophilia. And it seems like the globalists are legitimizing pedophilia, because when you're up there and you have every single delight in this world, you can fly anywhere, you can eat anything, you can have any experience, you can have any drug, and you have to keep upping the ante. You can have any woman you want. Oh, and then you can have any man you want. Then you go after the children, because it has to be weirder and weirder and more unique. Because the weirder and more unique you are, the more famous you are. I think they're more interesting, and people are more curious about them because they get weirder and weirder. And that's why people are paying money to see these people. But you're watching somebody that's losing their minds. And not just losing their minds, has license to take advantage of. People losing their minds who they put on drugs or lock up for a while don't get to take advantage of anyone. These people aren't locked up. And they're doing all the drugs they want to do. And they're taking advantage of a lot of people because they're famous. And a lot of people will give their children right over to them because you give the parents money. They don't care. A lot of parents sell their kids into prostitution. And people start seeing this as a norm. And pedophilia is becoming the norm. I say, as long as you're consenting adults, we've gone past that. And you destroy the children. You destroy the future. If you say you care about the earth. Well, oh, that's right. There's too many people. You need them dead anyway. But everybody that's going to be left to take care of the future is going to be a bunch of children that were sacrificed on the altar of pedophilia. And they were raped. And they were treated like dirt. If you care so much about the earth, they won't be able to take care of it. Because you've driven them crazy. They won't know what to do. They're shell-shocked. And pedophilia would be rampant because pedophiles, they say, create other pedophiles. There are some that completely go in the opposite direction, know that it's wrong, and there are some that become pedophiles because they've been driven crazy. They said this is the norm. And the only way they can rationalize what's happened to them is to say that it was okay, it was right, or at a point I started consenting. Because you have to rationalize, like you have to rationalize your parents have been abusing you. That's how you rationalize. I deserved it. I deserved it. After a while, I consented. It was okay. No, you were beaten into submission. And then you just said the only way you could live with yourself was to say, I consented. So they become pedophiles. So this is a whole psychological portrait. And I should add that to the beginning. This is a whole psychological analysis of Bono and our march towards pedophilia. Globalism's march towards pedophilia. That's what this is going to be entitled. But anyway, on to the next video. Good to see you again. And I'm sitting up. I'm very anemic. I'm sitting up now at the moment. And I hope you enjoyed this, even though it was long. But it's a complicated subject. And I will link those other videos that go into deeper and deeper just how crazy Bono is. Okay, so wake up, share the video, subscribe, share the video. Because people need to wake up, okay? I can only do so many of these videos because of my health condition. Anemia, severe asthma, all that stuff. So please pass this on because it is a psychological portrait of what's going on in the whole world and what the world is going to become. All right? Okay, bye-bye. See you again next time.